Hey guys, I am going to read topic 4 aloud. I am going to underline important information as I read it, and I'm going to make some text annotations on the side of my text. Reproduction and development. Topic overview. A species is a group of closely related organisms that share certain characteristics and can produce new individuals through reproduction. For any species to survive past a single generation, reproduction is essential. All individuals eventually die, but the species continues because individuals reproduce. When individuals reproduce, their offspring begin a period of development that ends in adulthood. Once an individual reaches adulthood, it is usually able to reproduce and continue the species for another generation. Types of reproduction. Two methods of reproduction are associated with living organisms: asexual and sexual. Asexual reproduction involves just one parent and results in one or more offspring that are genetically identical to the parent. Sexual reproduction involves two parents that results in offspring that have some genetic material DNA from each parent. The result is an organism that may be similar to one or both parents, but is not identical to either. So asexual means identical. Sexual reproduction means different. Asexual reproduction. Organisms reproduce asexually produce their offspring in a variety of ways. In some cases, they merely divide in two, producing two new individuals. Other organisms produce special cells that have a complete set of genetic information, and these individual cells can develop into new members of the species. Still, others produce an outgrowth of the body that later detaches to become a separate individual. Many plants can develop from parts that are either broken off intentionally by humans or separated naturally from the parent plant. In every case, organisms produced by asexual reproduction have only one parent, and they have the same genetic information in the form of DNA as the parent. Figure 4.1 shows some examples of asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, offspring receive half of their genes from one parent and half from the other. The genes are carried on chromosomes in sex cells, also known as gametes, or egg and sperm cells, which join in fertilization. Each parent supplies half of the genetic information needed to form a complete individual. The sperm, which is the sex cell from the father, provides half of the information. The egg, which is the sex cell from the mother, provides the other half. So sex cells equal gametes equal egg and sperm. Offspring produced by sexual reproduction combine genes inherited from each parent's gametes. Since an offspring gets only half of its DNA from each parent, it will not be identical to either of its parents. Also, since each offspring gets a unique combination of genes from its parents, it will differ from its siblings, brothers and sisters. Cloning. Cloning is a technique that accomplishes the same result as asexual reproduction. It is a way of making identical genetic copies. For example, if you cut a piece of stem from a plant and it grows roots and develops into a new plant, you have produced a genetically identical copy of the original plant. This could be called a clone of the plant. Recently, however, it has been possible to produce clones of animals that ordinarily only reproduce sexually. This is done by inserting a nucleus from a parent organism's cell into an egg cell from which the nucleus has been removed. The result is an egg that now contains not 50% but 100% of the genetic information from a single parent. If this new egg cell with all of its genes can be made to develop normally, the resulting offspring is a clone of the individual that donated the original cell nucleus. Cloning has been accomplished with animals as complex as sheep and pigs. Review question number 1. Which statement best describes the process of asexual reproduction? 1, it involves 2 parents. 2, it requires the combination of sperm and egg. 3, it results in variation in the offspring. Or 4, it involves the production of genetic copies. 2, which statement concerning an organism produced by cloning is correct? 1, the clone is genetically identical to its parent. 2, the clone has the combined genes of both of its parents. 3, the genetic makeup of the clone will be somewhat different from each of its parents. Or 4, the appearance of the clone will be entirely different from that of its parents. Number 3. A student using a compound light microscope to observe a cell saw a number of thread-like nuclear structures resembling these shown below. These thread-like structures are composed primarily of fat, glucose, DNA, or ATP. 4. Plants with desirable qualities can be rapidly produced from the cells of a single parent plants by cloning, gamete fusion, meiosis, or immune response. Number 5. Asexual reproduction differs from sexual reproduction in that in asexual reproduction, 1, new organisms are usually genetically identical to the parent. 2, the reproductive cycle involves the production of gametes. 3, nuclei of sex cells fuse to form a zygote. Or 4, offspring show much genetic variation. Number 6, orchid plants reproduce slowly and take many years to produce flowers when grown from seeds. One technique that can be used in genetic research to reproduce rare orchid plants more rapidly is 1, sexual reproduction, 2, fertilization, 3, selective breeding, or 4, cloning. Some bacteria produce an enzyme known as penicillinase, which prevents their destruction by penicillin. Since these organisms reproduce asexually, they normally produce offspring that can be killed by penicillin, have an abnormality high rate of mutation, have variable numbers of chromosomes, or are resistant to penicillin. Number 8. In plants, one way sexual reproduction differs from asexual reproduction is that in sexual reproduction, more offspring are produced. More genetic variation is seen in the offspring. 3, the offspring and the parents are identical, where 4, more offspring survive to maturity. Number 9. A man cuts some stems from several plants that are growing in his garden. He places the stems in a wet sand until they grow roots, and then he transplants them to new pots. This method of reproducing plants is most like 1, sexual reproduction, 2, cloning, 3, natural selection, or 4, fertilization. Number 10. Compared to the offspring of sexual reproduction in animals, the offspring of asexual reproduction will 1, show greater variety, 2, be more resistant to disease, 3, be genetically identical to the parent, or 4, grow larger. Cell division. Cell division is the orderly separation of one cell into 2. Before a cell divides, the genetic information in the DNA of the cells is duplicated exactly. This process by which a cell's genetic material divides, creating 2 complete sets of the cell's genetic material, is known as mitosis. Mitosis produces 2 cells that have a full set of identical genes and chromosomes. During mitosis, one copy of the genetic information is distributed to each new cell. As a result, each new cell has all the information it needs to function properly. One-celled organisms make use of mitosis for asexual reproduction. Multicellular organisms mainly use mitosis for growth and for cell replacement and repair. A second type of cell division is meiosis. This process divides the genetic material in a way that results in the production of sex cells required by organisms that reproduce sexually. So, meiosis makes sex cells, and mitosis makes body cells. Mitotic division / mitosis. During the process of mitotic cell division, the double-stranded chromosomes that are visible during mitosis split into 2 identical single strands and move apart to opposite ends of the cell. The process is shown in Figure 4.3. The process concludes when the cytoplasm divides, resulting in 2 smaller but genetically identical cells. Mitotic cell division in plants is illustrated in Figure 4.4. Meiotic division or meiosis. The gametes, sperm and eggs, formed during meiotic cell division each have only one half of the organism's genetic information, only one chromosome of each pair that is present in the body cells of that organism. However, a full set of genetic information is needed to produce a complete individual. When a sperm and egg combine and during fertilization, all of the newly paired chromosomes and all of the required genetic information are present in the fertilized egg. Meiotic division begins with a body cell that has the full number of chromosomes typical of the species. Depending on the species, the cell contains one or more pairs of chromosomes that determine the traits of the organism. Figure 4.5 shows an example. During the first phase of meiotic division, the double-stranded chromosomes line up in a pair in the center of the cell. The two chromosomes of each pair then separate, moving to opposite ends of the cell. Following this separation, the cell divides physically to form two cells. The second phase involves the division of each of these two new cells. This time, however, the chromosomes line up in a single file in the center of each cell. Each chromosome still consists of two strands. The strands separate and move to opposite ends of each of the dividing cells. When the process is complete, 4 cells have been formed, each having half the number of chromosomes of the organism's body cells. Each contains only one member of each original chromosome pair. Meiotic cell division is illustrated in figures 4.6 and 4.7. Notice that the formation of cells during meiotic division, in which each cell has half the usual number of chromosomes, is very different from the duplication distribution of a full set of chromosomes that occur in mitotic division. Meiotic division in females involves the same number of divisions and chromosome changes as in males. The division of the cytoplasm is where the two differ. The cytoplasm in a cell destined to become an egg cell divides unequally, resulting in one large egg cell and 3 small non-functioning cells. Meiotic division in females is shown in figure 4.7. Meiosis as a source of variation. The events that occur during meiosis do more than simply divide chromosomes into smaller sets and form smaller cells. Meiosis is responsible for much of the genetic variation among the sex cells of each individual. For example, the 2 members of each pair of chromosomes carry different ways of expressing many of the organism's traits, so the way the different pairs randomly line up in relation to the other pairs leads to many possible combinations in sex cells that result. 2 combinations are shown in figure 4.8. Another way variation can arise is by the exchange of parts of chromosomes, which occurs as they pair up during the first division. The process is sometimes called crossing over. The result is shown in figure 4.9. After separation, each set is unique. This means that there are no 2 sperm or egg cells, even from the same parent, that are alike. Each time a sperm and egg cell combine, a unique combination of genetic information results. Review question number 11. When complex plants are produced by cloning, which process is most directly involved? Mitotic cell division, meiotic cell division, gamete production, or sperm fertilization? The key word there is cloning. If a lobster loses a claw, it is capable of growing a new one. What process makes this possible? Meiosis, fertilization, sexual reproduction, or mitosis? Number 13. Organisms that reproduce asexually usually do so by a form of cell division called meiosis, mitosis, gamete formation, or sperm formation. Number 14. A normal body cell of a fruit fly contains 8 chromosomes. Each normal gamete of this organism contains 4 chromosomes as a result of meiosis, 4 chromosomes as a result of mitosis, 8 chromosomes as a result of meiosis, or 8 chromosomes as a result of mitosis. The process of mitotic cell division normally results in the production of 4 cells with half the number of chromosomes as the parent, 2 cells with the same number of chromosomes as the parent, 2 cells with 1 chromosome from each parent, or 1 cell with a replicated set of matched chromosomes. Number 16. Each of the 2 daughter cells or offspring cells that result from the normal mitotic division of the original parent cell contains 1. The same number of chromosomes but different genes than the parent, 2, the same number of chromosomes and genes identical to those of the parent cell. 3, 1/2 of the number of chromosomes but different genes than those of the parent cell. Or 4, 1/2 of the number of chromosomes and genes identical to those of the parent cell. Number 17. All types of asexual reproduction involve the process known as mitosis, fertilization, meiotic division, or aging. Number 18. The diagrams below represent the sequence of events in a cell undergoing normal meiotic cell division. How many cells will finally be produced? How many chromosomes will be in each cell? Sketch one of the final cells, showing its chromosomes. Number 19. The species chromosome number of orangutans is 48. Which diagram represents normal fertilization in orangutans? Number 20. Which process is represented in the following photographs? 1, mitotic cell division, 2, zygote formation, 3, fertilization, or 4, recombination. Number 21. If the sperm cells of a fish have 12 chromosomes, how many chromosomes would be found in the cells forming the scales of the fish? 6, 12, 24, or 48. Zygote formation. During fertilization, the gametes unite to form a zygote, a cell that contains all of the genetic information needed by the offspring. This process is known as recombination, since the genes from both parents recombine when fertilization occurs. Since a sex cell contains a unique combination of genetic material, the result of the random combination of any sperm and egg explains the variation found in offspring produced by sexual reproduction. This variation plays a key role in evolutionary change and species survival. The zygote contains all the information necessary for growth, development, and eventual reproduction of the organism. The zygote divides by mitosis to form a multicellular organism. Fertilization, zygote formation, and some early mitotic divisions that occur in development are shown in Figure 410. Early development. During the early stages of development, the cells that are formed by mitotic division begin to undergo differentiation, which simply means that they become different from one another. This leads to the formation of specialized cells, which form for the tissues and then organs of multicellular organisms. In an embryo, an organism in an early stage of development, all the genetic information in each cell starts out the same. However, different genes are activated or deactivated in certain cells, causing them to make only some of the many proteins they are capable of synthesizing. As a result, these cells become different from others and may develop into skin cells, muscle cells, or any of the other specialized cells of the organism. The activation or inactivation of genes can be due to environmental influences from within the cell, from surrounding cells, or from outside the organism. When a gene is actively producing its protein, scientists say the gene is expressed. There's much evidence that gene expression, which is the result of activated genes, can be modified through interaction with the environment. For example, fruit flies that have genes to develop curly wings will develop straight wings instead, if they are raised in a cooler than normal environment. Another example of an environmentally produced gene modification is a plant grown without light. Such a plant is white instead of green, because sunlight is needed to stimulate the gene that produces chlorophyll. Number 22. An exact duplication of the complete set of chromosomes of a cell followed by the separation of these duplicate sets into two new cells is known as mitotic cell division, zygote formation, meiotic cell division, or fertilization. Number 23. New cells are produced within the uterus as a direct result of 1. Gamete formation, 2. Meiotic cell division, mitotic cell division, or ecological succession. Number 24. The data table below summarizes the results of an experiment using primrose plants grown under different temperature conditions. Which conclusion can be drawn from this data table? 1. Color in primroses is determined only by gene action. 2. Many traits are not inherited. 3. Gene exchanges only occur when the plants are grown at lower temperatures. 4. There is an interaction between environment and hereditary. Number 25. When organisms reproduce sexually, the species number of chromosomes is maintained. This can be demonstrated with a diagram like the one below. Complete the diagram by filling in the blanks in the appropriate information. Number 26, 27, 28, and 29 are based on this diagram. Diagram A represents the chromosomes in the nucleus of the body cell of a worm. Diagrams B through G represent chromosomal arrangements that may occur in the other cells produced by this worm. 26. If meiosis failed to occur in both male and female worms, the zygote nucleus would resemble the diagram E, G, C, or D. If genes were exchanged between a single pair of chromosomes during gamete formation, the gamete nucleus would most closely resemble diagram F, B, C, or G. Number 28. The nucleus of a normal zygote formed when fertilization occurs in this species would most likely resemble diagram E, F, C, or D. Number 29. The nucleus of a mature gamete from a female worm would most likely resemble diagram E, B, C, D. Number 30. In human females, gametes are produced in the uterus, testes, ovaries, or estrogen. Number 31. Complex organisms produce sex cells that unite during fertilization, forming a single cell known as an embryo, a gamete, a clone, or a zygote. Female reproductive system. The human female reproductive system is organized to produce gametes to support internal fertilization and development. Internal. To exchange materials through the placenta and to provide milk to the offspring. In human females, the ovaries produce egg cells, or female gametes, and the hormones estrogen and progesterone. These hormones are associated with sexual development and reproductive process. The ovaries are located near the open ends of the tube, called oviducts. The egg cell can be fertilized in the oviduct if sperm are present. The oviducts lead to the uterus, where the embryo develops into a fetus. The main parts of the female reproductive system are illustrated in figure 411. After the fertilized egg sinks into the thickened wall of the uterus, a placenta begins to form. The placenta is the organ responsible for the passage of nutrients and oxygen from the mother's blood to the fetus. So the placenta is an organ. Waste from the fetus also diffuse to the mother's blood through the placenta. During birth, the muscular uterus undergoes a series of contractions that eventually push the baby out of the mother's body. The early events of pregnancy are shown in figure 412. Male reproductive system. The testes of the male reproductive system are the organs that produce the sperm cells. The testes also produce the hormone testosterone, which is associated with male sexual development and reproduction. Other structures associated with the male reproductive system produce the fluids and nutrients that are needed for the proper function and delivery of the male gametes to the female reproductive system. The essential parts of the human male reproductive system are shown on 413. So I'm just going to put female hormones are estrogen and progesterone. There we go. And male hormones are testosterone. Hormonal regulation. The male reproductive system and other male characteristics such as facial hair and deep voice that develop as sexual maturity is reached are influenced by several hormones, including testosterone from the testes. The development of the female reproductive system and female features such as breast development and widening of the hips also involves several important hormones such as estrogen and progesterone. Once sexual maturity is reached, females begin a regular cycle of 28 days, during which an egg is released on about day 14. The timing of the events of this cycle is regulated by 2 hormones from the ovaries, along with several other from an endocrine gland in the brain. Figure 4.14 illustrates a change in the levels of several hormones associated with regulating the monthly cycle. The cycle varies slightly from individual to individual. Although the interactions of hormones are quite complex, estrogen and progesterone play an important roles in the female reproductive cycle. Estrogen from the ovaries influences the sexual development of females. Together, estrogen and progesterone influence the preparation of the lining of the uterus so that a fertilized egg that embeds itself there can develop normally. Progesterone also maintains the uterine lining throughout pregnancy. For this reason, progesterone is often called the hormone of pregnancy. At the end of the cycle, if an egg is not fertilized, the levels of estrogen and progesterone decrease and the lining of the uterus breaks down. Then the cycle begins again. Human development. As the most other mammals, embryonic development continues in the uterus. Figure 4.15 shows some of the features of the uterus during pregnancy. During the first part of pregnancy, cells continue to divide by mitotic division and begin to differentiate, forming tissues and organs. The placenta and fluid-filled sac that cushions and protects the developing embryo both form at this time too. After about 2 months, when all the major organs have begun to form, the embryo is called a fetus. So after about 2 months, the embryo is called a fetus. During the first few months, when essential organs are forming in the embryo, things can go wrong. Problems associated with either the embryo's inherited genes or the mother's exposure to various harmful environmental factors can affect the embryo. Harmful environmental factors that women should avoid at any time during pregnancy include alcohol, drugs, and tobacco. Use of these can lead to the birth of a baby with brain damage, drug addiction, or low birth weight, and these problems associated with it. An embryo or fetus may also be harmed if the mother has a poor diet, is exposed to certain toxic substances, or gets certain infections from German measles or AIDS. After birth, cell differentiation and body growth continue until adulthood. During adulthood, the structures of the body slowly begin to age. Eventually, the organism weakens and dies. The process of birth, growth and development, aging, and death is a predictable pattern that applies not just to humans, but all organisms. Applications of reproductive technology. Recent discoveries by scientists have greatly changed the way we can deal with many problems involving the reproduction of humans, as well as plants and other organisms. The knowledge we have gained has a variety of agriculture, ecological, and medical applications. In the field of agriculture, scientists have produced plants that are resistant to insects, weed killers, and even frost. Such altered plants can then be cloned to produce thousands of genetically identical offspring. Using artificial insemination, scientists can generate hundreds of offspring from one farm animal. They can also freeze the sperm of fertilized eggs of an animal and transport them to animals thousands of miles away at far less cost than transporting the animals themselves. In the field of ecology, reproductive technology is being used to help build up populations of endangered species. Embryos from the endangered species have been transplanted into related species, who later have given birth to offspring that are no different than they would be and develop the bodies of the endangered animals themselves. Also, hormones of insects that regulate their reproduction and development have been studied in an attempt to find ways to control insects without using the poisonous chemicals. In the field of medicine, recent scientific discoveries have led to new ways of dealing with reproductive problems in humans, other animals, and plants. Some women cannot become pregnant because of problems with their hormones, ovaries, or other parts of their reproductive systems. Reproductive technologies have enabled doctors to help infertile women become pregnant by using the hormone therapy to adjust their hormones and enable doctors to help infertile women become pregnant by using hormone therapy. Sometimes doctors can extract several eggs from a woman's ovaries and fertilize them with a sperm in a laboratory dish. When these fertilized eggs are implanted in the woman's uterus, a successful pregnancy may result. Ultrasound and miniature video cameras allow doctors to view ovaries, oviducts, and other reproductive structures, or even a developing fetus to determine if or where problems exist. Methods have been also developed to retrieve fetal cells that are present in the fluids around the developing fetus. Doctors can then analyze the cells for chromosome abnormalities and the fluids for biochemical deficiencies that may threaten the health or development of the fetus. Number 32. What substances are involved in controlling the production of sperm and eggs in humans? Vitamins, hormones, starches, or minerals? 33. Which practice is essential to good prenatal care? Increased egg production, frequent dieting, avoidance of drugs, or intake of antibiotics? Number 34. Which part of the human male reproductive system involves hormones that influence the development of the male sex characteristics? 1 penis, 2 testes, 3 gametes, or 4 ovaries? 35. The diagram below represents a sequence of events in a human ovary. The process that occurs between stage A and stage B is known as egg formation, sperm formation, mitotic cell division, or cell recombination. Number 36. The diagram below represents a series of events that take place in the life cycle of humans. Which term best describes the event taking place in the box labeled X? Fertilization, immune response, meiosis, and protein synthesis. Base your answers to questions 37 through 9 on the diagram below. 37. Fertilization usually only occurs within which structure? A, B, C, or D? Number 38. A placenta normally develops in structure A, B, C, or D. 39. The structure that produces estrogen and progesterone is A, B, C, or D. Base your answers to questions 40 through 42 on the diagram below and your knowledge of biology. Number 40. Gametes are produced in A only, B only, both A and B, neither A nor B. 41. Estrogen and progesterone are produced in A only, B only, both A and B, neither A nor B. 42. A substance is produced that influences both the reproductive cycle and the development of sex characteristics in 1. A only, 2. B only, 3. Both A and B, or 4. Neither A nor B. 43. In humans and other mammals, nutrients are transferred from the mother's bloodstream to the embryo's bloodstream across the placenta, uterus, ovary, or intestine. Number 44. Which substance is a waste that would normally diffuse across the placenta from the embryo to the mother? Glucose, oxygen, amino acid, or carbon dioxide? 45. The egg of a mammal is smaller than that of a bird because the embryo of the mammal obtains its nutrients from the placenta through the process of diffusion, mammary glands of the mother, blood of the mother when it mixes with the blood of the embryo, or yolk stored in the uterus of the mother. Base your answers to questions 46 and 47 on the diagram below, which represents an experiment. 46. An inference that can be made from this experiment is that 1. Adult frog B will have the same genetic traits as the tadpole. 2. Adult frog A can develop only from an egg and sperm. 3. Fertilization must occur in order for frog eggs to develop into adult frogs. Or 4. The nucleus of a body cell fails to function when transferred to other cell types. 47. Other scientists substituted a nucleus from a frog sperm cell and no adult frog developed. Explain why a sperm cell nucleus would not work in this procedure. Base your answers to questions 48 through 51 on the diagram below and your knowledge of biology. The diagram represents the human female reproductive system. Fill in the boxes labeled 48 through 51 in the chart below using the information from the diagram. So, 48 is the name of the structure that produces gametes, and 49 is the letter on the diagram that produces the gametes. Number 50 is the function of the uterus. Number 51 asks you to name the structure that transports oxygen directly to the embryo.